Welcome to State of the State. I'm Darlene DeRezzo, and I'm in conversation with Niyoka Powell. She is the second vice chair of the Rhode Island GOP. She's here to talk to us about what she's been up to since her run for Rhode Island State Senate. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Darlene.
Got that right?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Okay, so where do we want to start? I think I want to start with a little statement that you made when you were running.
Sure.
I shatter the Democrat machine's ridiculous caricature of a Republican. I'm a young black immigrant from Jamaica. My fiance is a welder of Puerto Rican and Cuban descent. We've personally experienced the pain of inflation, wage stagnation, and housing dislocation.
Yes.
Yeah, tell me more. Let's unpack that.
Yeah, so I came to the United States when I was 9 years old from Jamaica.
Okay.
And life in Jamaica is always very much on the forefront of my mind. It helps to bring me in different directions because I reflect a lot on what my childhood was like and what childhood in the United States was like. Mm-hmm. I get to compare two different cultures, two different political parties, and two different ways of life. And through both of them, we come to, a conclusion of where we want to thrive. And I want to thrive right in between both. I want to acknowledge my culture, I want to accept the American culture, and I want to be the best neighbor anyone's ever had, right? So what that means to me is being a good citizen, taking part in our community, building it for our children, and making sure that we're not leaving anyone behind while we build. So to think that being a black woman, being an immigrant to this country means that I have to adhere to a specific party or a specific way of living is not necessarily true, because most islanders, believe it or not, are very much conservative. And especially with the Hispanic community, they're very much conservative in ways of which they raise their family and in ways that they provide and protect their children.
Yeah, look, I'm going to have you describe conservative.
Sure.
So what do you mean by that?
By conservative, I mean, we have a moral compass that just kind of drives us, right? We believe in God, we believe in family, we believe in country, we believe in doing right and doing no harm to others. We believe in just being able to live and let live with the smallest amount of, infraction on someone else's life, because what do we need is the pursuit of happiness, correct? I mean, even the Bill of Rights and the Constitution in itself reflects a lot of that ideology of living in a cohesive way with other people.
Why do you think there is such a divide now?
I think that we're in a position where cultures are clashing. I think we had this very grandiose idea of what America is supposed to look like, and not understand the different diverse cultures that are the building blocks of American life. And when you start to mix them at such a rapid rate, it becomes unstable. Culture in itself, if you don't understand it, you can have a lot of discourse, because if I don't understand you and your mannerisms, I would take offense, correct? And so but that's where people tend to go. If they don't understand something, they fear it. Okay. So it's not necessarily that, we're going to fear one culture over another. It's all happening at the same time. And typically, when we speak of immigration, there's a way to do it where you bring in a small amount and introduce at a time, where it becomes the American culture, where people are able to assimilate, people are able to understand the cultures and the people around them, right? So it's more or less the way of bringing culture together, but this is way too rapid. Okay. So you have a lot of noise from it.
So what was life like in Jamaica?
Life in Jamaica, I was very poor. I was very poor. I grew up on one of the poorest sides of the island, believe it or not. And I remember
So what does poor look like?
Poor looks like an outhouse that's not attached to the house.
Wow.
It looks like rain coming through zinc roof.
Is there plumbing?
No plumbing.
Wow.
I remember being about 6 years old when we finally got a water pipe in the yard. I remember putting buckets of water out in the sun so that it would warm up for when I was ready to bathe in the evening time. That's what poor looks like. Poor looks cool, like no stove in your house. You have to do a wood fire.
Wow.
That's what I remember.
What would you eat? So you prepare meals over the wood fire?
Yeah, my great-grandmother actually taught me how to cook at 5. She was legally blind, and I don't know how she did the cooking in the house because she knew where everything was. Oh. She knew how to prepare everything, and she had me sit with her one day just to see what she did. And from then, I just helped her along in the kitchen, and I learned how to cook in that way. Mm-hmm. But we would cook rice, we'd cook crab, we'd cook fish that we caught in the river. We would cook breadfruit. It's literally it looks like, like a soccer ball almost. Mm-hmm. It's like this big and it has like the little hexagons all over it. And it is almost like having bread. That's why it's called breadfruit. Mm-hmm. And we would roast that on an open fire. It was just a wonderful life, honestly. Even as a child, I thought that was the whole hands-on, outdoorsy aspect of it is something I crave. Mm-hmm. Life in Jamaica as a child, to me, of course, not as a parent with children that you have to worry about, is not as sweet, right?
Yeah. Are you an only child?
I am not an only child.
So
I have 3 siblings in Jamaica.
Oh,
the eldest one lives in England, though.
Okay.
And then I have 1 sibling here in the United States.
Okay, so did the entire family immigrate?
No, we did not. No, we did not.
Okay.
And just like the immigration system is supposed to work or needs reform in some way, my father married and moved to the United States. I still lived in Jamaica with my mother.
Okay, so you had a family unit in Jamaica. Then your parents divorced, or?
Parents were never married.
They were never married.
Yes.
He married someone else, moved here. Okay.
Moved here, yes. A girl in Westerly. And then after he moved up here, they filed for me to come up. He came back to Jamaica.
Just you?
Just me.
What was that like for your family? Were you the oldest, the youngest? Like, where were you?
I was the baby. I was the youngest. And it was very, I would say, traumatic as a child, because I wasn't told I was leaving. I wasn't told I was going to live here. And it was more of, I thought I was coming to visit until I was enrolled in school.
Wow.
So the preparation isn't really there, but you have to understand it's also the dynamics of living in a third world country. You're living in a third world country, you're constantly looking over your shoulders, people are dying left and right because of either gang violence or,
Did you experience gang violence or violence?
Gosh, yes. Oh gosh, yes. It was, and these are people you grow up with. And that's the strange part, is that you're seeing people around you die. And it's not necessarily from firearms. It's usually like machetes or, fist fights and things like that, where it's just accidental deaths. It was a brutal life, but I remember it fondly because it has, like I said, guided me through where I am in my life today.
So that must have been, very traumatic. You must have missed your mother terribly. But your father followed the necessary path, right, to have you here. Was the plan to bring your siblings over as well, or
not really? Okay. One of the things about immigrant families, especially Jamaican immigrant families, you're either close-knit, where you do everything together, or you're not, right? And you go off and do what you want to do, you follow your own path. So my eldest sister went to England because a majority of our family is in England. My brother and my youngest sibling are still in Jamaica. And then my mother, I brought her here a few years ago, 2 years ago, right before COVID, lockdowns and everything happened, from Jamaica. So she is living in South Carolina. She wanted to do her own thing. So, the family dynamic is great, but you can also understand that people have different aspirations as well, especially as immigrants coming into this country. It's not necessarily that we're going to stay together, but we understand that we support each other. And we hope that, whatever decisions you make them and enjoy them.
Yeah, what was that process like?
Filing for immigration?
For your mom, yeah.
Well,
this must have been 2019? Or
2019, I filed the paperwork. And one of the problems with that is you have to stay on top of immigration once you file the paperwork. she would have been here a year earlier had I kept on immigration. They jumped over her application, and they were dealing with applications from like 2020, and hers was 2019. So you kind of have to keep on them to keep priority.
Okay.
And so once I figured that out after calling New Hampshire,
New Hampshire?
Yes, New Hampshire, I was able to get that expedited, and she was able to get here by June.
So she came from Jamaica to Rhode Island and then
Yes.
decided on South Carolina.
Well, she decided to travel the United States
Wow.
and then settled in South Carolina.
Wow.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So what brought you into politics?
Honestly, it was the pandemic.
Okay.
It was having a child with epilepsy that's supposed to be entering the public school system. It was realizing that there's no such thing as stability, and realizing that everything can be taken away from you if someone wants to take it away from you.
Yeah, so you must have lost a lot of support then with your child being at home, given that she has a significant medical issue, right? So tell us about that, and then how you made your way into politics, and when your first foray in politics was what? Okay, so let's go back to, so probably medical need.
Medical
right?
needs,
You really,
yes.
okay.
So one of the things that I looked into when our child came of age to start going to school was pre-K. And I had to look up all the school systems. I had to look into Providence, because that's where we live, and see what was available. I looked at practically every single daycare, pre-K, kindergarten schools, K through 12. I was just like, what system? Where is she going to go?
And
how do I
old was she?
maneuver
Was she
this?
4?
She was 4.
4, okay.
And we decided to send her to Tender Hearts in Warwick.
Okay.
Amazing school, very small classes.
And you have to pay tuition?
And we had to pay tuition,
Okay.
yes. And so we decided to send her there because of the epilepsy. She was so irregular with her episodes that I didn't want that to happen to anyone in the public school system, because I didn't think that they would have been prepared for it. I wasn't prepared for it. As a nurse, I was not prepared for my child to be going through such traumatic episodes that I literally could do nothing but watch. But I was able to work hand in hand with the teachers and everything, and they were wonderful. They got trained, and they called me every 2 seconds if something happened, and I would be able to talk to them about it just to calm them and calm their nerves. And fast forward to even kindergarten, then we had to find another school. And now it's getting more intense because now she's getting older. So same thing, she was slated to go to VZ Street School in Providence. We looked at all the stats, and we just couldn't see ourselves sending her there, especially with the changes that were happening in education. We did not believe that that was for us.
Okay, and what year is this now?
And this was 2021.
Okay.
So we decided to put her in a private school.
Okay.
We decided to continue paying for school because we were able to work more closely with staff at these schools, and they were more open to suggestions, and they also gave us enough data to bring to her doctors to help with her care and her treatment. So as much as I feel like I hold my breath still when I talk about it, because at any moment I felt that she could go into an episode and it would be in front of a group of children that didn't understand what was happening, and it would be devastating for them.
But what about appropriate education? Right? So doesn't the school system in Providence need to provide an appropriate education?
Of course,
Okay.
of course. Well, I worked well with the private school.
Okay.
They actually trained all of their staff in epilepsy treatment.
But it sounds like you're saying the public school couldn't do that for you.
Oh no, I was looking at stats for the schools in
Okay.
order to get the education that my child needed in order to grow. I wanted her to focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Okay.
And the politics of school in Providence is just appalling.
Okay.
Yeah. I just felt that that wasn't in alignment with what our family believed in.
Okay. Any plans to work on changing that?
Yes,
Oh.
I am. Yes, I hope to work with legislatures and work with the community in making sure that the school goes back to the city of Providence. I do not think that having it under a state control is actually doing any good, because I'm waiting to put my child back into a school system that I can actually have some comfort in leaving her there. And I don't have that with the current administration and the fact that it is taken over by the state. And I look at Central Falls. Central Falls has been under state control for 30 plus years, and there's been no improvement for the students. It's just been, you know, a forgotten town in a way, and it's coming back slowly but surely, but it's...
Who has control now in Central Falls? Still the state? Or
it's still the state.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't want that to happen.
And what exactly does that mean? City versus state control of the school system?
Well, I think that the school board would have more say. I think that the parents would have more say. I think the community as a whole would have more say in how the schools are run, because it affects them directly. When you have another administration making these decisions for the students and making the decisions for the parents, and you have complete, you know, control of what's happening in these schools, you can teach whatever you want. You can, you know, you can make adjustments wherever you want, whether it fits the curriculum or not, whether it fits the community or not. You just decide on whatever you want to do. I've spoken to parents who have their children in, you know, not in the Providence school system. And one of the biggest problems that they have as teachers in the Providence school system is that they're constantly assessing students. They're never really having much time to actually teach the curriculum they want to teach. It just seems like they keep getting more and more testing, surveys, and things that they have to pile onto their workload before they even get to teach what they need to teach. So, you know, I want the focus to be on, you know, the basics. Get the basics down, and then we can maneuver in some new things. But if we don't have the basics down, then what's the point in sending them?
Okay. Now, what was your first foray into politics?
It was deciding that the lockdowns didn't go as planned, and I worked with the Rhode Island Disaster Medical Team during COVID. I was going back and forth volunteering my time every other Tuesday, every other Thursday, every other weekend, while working and raising a family, right?
And what were you doing as far as your volunteering? What were you?
Oh, I did all of the testing on the island. I helped to do all of the COVID testing on the island.
On
Block Island. Yeah,
wow.
on Block Island.
Wow.
And then I would volunteer the weekend, the Saturdays, at the health center that's on the island as well.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a lot. Very busy.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Okay.
And so I just felt that the state wasn't prepared. As someone who was, you know, in the trenches during COVID and, you know, doing all that was necessary, they didn't really take our input with much. They made the decisions above our heads, and it did what it did to the state. And I think that it could have gone far different, much different, and I think that people would have been better off had they listened to the community.
Okay. So that led you where then?
That led me to contemplate the idea of running for office and, you know, making the state listen for once to the constituents, because I'm talking to neighbors who are fed up with cost of living. I'm talking to neighbors who are fed up with, you know, the increase in violence in the city. I'm talking to neighbors who are like, okay, I call the police and they say, well, you know, it's been happening around town, and kind of shrugs off concerns. I mean, my car was broken into at least 3 or 4 times.
Where?
In Providence, outside of our house.
Which, well, I guess you don't have to say where you live, but...
Well, I don't live there anymore.
Okay, yeah.
But,
so
you know...
that's scary when you
so,
can't get a police response and
exactly.
there's violence all around you.
And they say, you know, if they do find somebody, if they do arrest somebody, they're out the next day. So what would be the point in that?
Yeah.
That doesn't give much faith in the community where you think that you're being protected. So that made me want to get more involved and understand what was happening around me.
Okay, so you ran for Rhode Island State Senate?
I ran for Senate.
Okay. And you lost?
I did.
I'm sorry, but
No,
well
it's
for
okay.
you know.
No,
so would you run again?
I would run again.
Okay.
I would run again. I don't look at the losses as a discontent at all. Each time I ran, I learned something extremely important. And each time I spoke to the neighbors, I spoke to teachers, I spoke to nurses, and, you know, even police officers, I had and gained a new perspective on what this actually means. And so regardless of if I would love to get to the State House, I would love to be able to serve the community in that way. But like I said, each time that I've done it, I've learned a great deal. And I've also made really great connections with people who I'm continuously working with even today.
Okay. So you're second vice chair of the Round GOP. When did you get that appointment?
Last March.
Oh, so you've been at this about a year now. Anything new, changed? What direction do you want to go in? Tell us more about that.
Sure. I focus on a more grassroots approach because in order to understand the community, you need to be a part of the community. You need to understand what the community needs are above your own and be able to articulate that to your party or to your constituents, that you are listening and you understand where they're coming from with their concerns. So my focus primarily has been to go from city to city, understanding what the needs and cultures are of those cities, because each city and town in the state of Rhode Island has a really unique niche that, you know, calls them their own. Like Gloucester is so much different than Foster and, you know, the little parts of Foster. And then you have Warren, and it's just so different from Westerly. So understanding the culture of the state is very important because that's how you understand the people.
Okay. So what's next for you? Actually, before what's next, what are some of the other organizations that you're involved in?
Well, I'm working with 2 Liberian organizations currently, trying to help them with a project that is soon to be coming in May.
And I'm sorry, what was that?
2 Liberian organizations.
Okay.
We're working on a project that we'll be showcasing in May.
And you can't tell us?
I don't want to tell you yet.
Okay.
I want to keep the surprise.
Okay.
But yeah, so I'm working with 2 Liberian organizations, helping to build and get membership to their organizations and pretty much bring them more out into the community instead of having them just hidden in the corner. I've worked with the Jamaican Association as well. I'm the city director for Blexit RI. I'm also working with Mathewson Street Church.
February is Black History Month.
Yes, it is.
So is any of your organizations involved in any activities around the state?
I actually, I was part of I'm actually a member of the state holiday for the MLK Commission.
Okay.
So we had that holiday. We haven't really done anything for February, which is interesting, because you would think that the commission would do something for February for Black History Month, but we haven't done anything major for Black History Month. It's, you know, so the last meeting that I had, I actually hosted it and was able to, you know, get a hall and cater the meeting itself. And I felt like that was, you know, a good vibe to have, because usually we go to someone's home to do the meetings and such. So it was nice to not have anybody cooking and not having anybody worry or stress about what to do next and if there's going to be enough space for all the members and such.
Okay. And so you said we have a Blexit chapter
we do have a Blexit chapter in Rhode Island.
When did that start, and do you want to share about that?
That started while I was running for office, probably a year before I ran for office. That chapter started in the state of Rhode Island, and when I finished running for office, they approached me and asked if I wanted to be the city director for Providence, and I said yes, because I felt that it was in alignment with what my beliefs are, which is give to your community and give back to your community. Reach the people and learn about the people around you, and that's how you build a community. So I took on the position of, and it's all volunteer. I'm not getting paid for anything that I do. It's all volunteer. And that's my passion.
Okay, so then what's on the horizon?
What's on the horizon is whatever the Lord throws my way.
Okay.
I don't have a plan. I don't have a plan of what's on the horizon because I still work a 9 to 5, so I still have to commit 40 hours a week.
What do you do 9 to 5, by the way?
I'm a nurse in manufacturing.
Okay.
Yes, I run a clinic. I deal with all of the OSHA and the workman's comp type cases that come out of manufacturing.
Okay. Okay. So not sure what's on the horizon. So what was it like growing up in the United States? And you're a success story.
I loved every minute of it.
You're the American dream, right? Right?
I'd hope so. I like my dream.
Yeah.
But I loved every minute of it. I still love every minute of it because I have something to compare it to. I think that there are a lot of things that are taken for granted.
Like what?
Like drinking water.
Well, yeah,
right?
You did not have a toilet that flushed, right?
Like indoor plumbing, like air conditioning. Air conditioning is huge. And you don't have to sleep under mosquito nets, right? You don't have to think about, malaria. You don't have to think about those types of, very tropical diseases.
It must have been like a culture shock.
Honestly, I don't think it was because I embraced it.
Okay.
I embraced everything about it.
But there wasn't anything traumatic about leaving your mom, your great-grandmother, thinking that you were going to go back?
In all honesty, when I was about 15 years old was when that showed up again.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was almost like a repressed memory. And then when I was 15, I was like, oh my gosh, I have not been back to Jamaica in 6 years. It just dawned on me that I've been in this country for 6 years and I had not gone back.
Wow.
Because in that growth period of my life, so much happens to your body as a child going in through puberty. And then so much is happening where you are in a different culture, so you have to understand the inner workings of that culture as well. And so growing up was, I took part in tennis, I did track, I did choir, I did theater, I was president of the Amistad Club, I was part of the Teachers Association for school. So I really immersed myself in a lot of things to help me understand where I was in my life. And then once I understood that, it was like, oh, but I'm also Jamaican.
Okay.
So you have to go back to that culture again. So there's a lot of mixing that happens to a person that comes into this country, where you have to really have a due north, if you wouldn't want to say. You have to have some kind of a direction in order to understand where you're going.
Where did you think you were going?
Well, in all honesty, I see myself retiring in Jamaica. I see myself going back to Jamaica in my older years. I think that this is a part of my life where I'm exploring my surroundings, and then I will be content going back and just growing old.
You got here at 9. At 15, you realized you hadn't been back for several years. During that time, did you communicate with your mom? Like, how did you?
Sparingly, because remember that
no
was
phone.
Well, exactly. So back then, that's another, first world problem is the phone, right?
Yeah.
I remember going to the phone booth down the street from the house. I think we probably walked a mile to get there. I remember doing that at a very young age, calling my dad who was living up here, and then walking back home. So when we think about convenience of calling someone, there's no convenience of calling someone in Jamaica when I was a kid.
Yeah.
We didn't have a house phone. We had to use the pay phone down at the, crossroads of the street.
Yeah, so you could not reach out to family.
Correct. So we'd have to schedule a time that we're going to meet with each other or talk to each other, and then we just had to be there.
Yep. We have a minute left. Anything else before we wrap up?
Well, I think that the state is in a very exciting place right now, and I think that this legislative session will show a lot of the either improvements or things that need to be done for the state and the city of Providence as a whole. And I think that we are on a crash course, and I think that we need to really focus on what our next steps are.
I'm Darlene DeRezzo. Thank you for watching.